Rolling Stone picked the 10 greatest rock artists of all time. 55 insiders voted. The results were locked, counted, and verified, but here's what most people never talk about. Behind every name on that list, but there's a story they didn't print, sacrifices, rivalries, moments that almost never happened. You think you know these artists, you've heard the songs, you've seen the footage, but knowing the name is not the same as knowing the truth. These are the 10 greatest rock artists of all time, and this is what really happened. Number 10, Ray Charles. Ray Charles, the man they called the genius. And that wasn't a nickname, that was a warning. Close your eyes for a second. Imagine a piano player who literally could not see and yet saw music more clearly than anyone alive. That's Ray. Every time he sat down at those keys, something happened that you couldn't explain with words. It felt like church, it felt like the blues, it felt like something brand new all at once. Ray Charles Robinson was born in Georgia in 1930. He went blind by the age of 7, likely from glaucoma. He taught himself to play by feel, by memory, by pure instinct. He recorded on Atlantic Records in the early 50s and later moved to ABC Paramount, where he fought for and won ownership of his master recordings. Think about that. In 1960, a black artist owning his masters, that almost never happened back then. His album Modern Sounds in Country and Western Music from 1962 was a bold, yet almost crazy move, mixing soul with country at a time when those worlds did not mix. It went to number 1. It stayed there for 14 weeks. It changed what radio sounded like overnight. I'm calling my Georgia. Here's something most people don't know. Ray Charles was actually banned from the state of Georgia in 1961 for refusing to perform at a segregated venue. The state banned him, and then 20 years later, they named Georgia on My Mind the official state song, the same man they banned. You can't make that up because people put Ray in a box. They call him soul. They call him jazz, they call him R&B, and they forget that without Ray Charles blending all those sounds together, there is no rock and roll as we know it. He was the blueprint, he was the foundation before the foundation. Coming up, a woman whose voice was so powerful it made grown men sit down and be quiet. And she landed at number 9 on this list for a reason. Number 9, Aretha Franklin. There's a moment in every Aretha performance where the air changes. You feel it before you understand it. She doesn't just sing a song, she takes it apart and rebuilds it around herself. She was the kind of singer that made other great singers nervous. Aretha was born in Memphis in 1942 and grew up in Detroit, the daughter of a famous Baptist preacher. She signed to Columbia Records as a teenager, but the label didn't quite know what to do with her. And then in 1967, she moved to Atlantic Records, and producer Jerry Wexler took her down to Muscle Shoals Sound Studio in Alabama. What happened in those sessions changed everything. Respect, originally written and recorded by Otis Redding, became something else entirely in Aretha's hands. She flipped the meaning. She made it an anthem for women, for Black America, for anyone who had ever been overlooked. It hit number 1 in 1967 and never really left the culture. Aretha could play piano at an elite concert level, but she rarely got credit for it because her voice was so overwhelming. She actually played piano on most of her own sessions and arranged her own vocal parts. She wasn't just a singer, she was a musician's musician who happened to also have the greatest voice in history. Stick with me. Because number 8 on this list is the man who invented the blueprint for every wild, screaming rock and roll performer you've ever loved. And his story almost didn't happen at all. Number 8, Little Richard, the self-proclaimed architect of rock and roll. And here's the thing, he wasn't bragging, he was just telling the truth. Picture 1955. Music was neat, tidy, safe, hair combed, suits pressed, everyone sitting still, and then Little Richard walked up to a piano and let out a scream that cracked the whole thing open. He didn't just break the rules, he acted like the rules had never existed. Richard Wayne Penniman was born in Macon, Georgia in 1932. He was the third of 12 children raised in poverty and spent his early years singing in church choirs and traveling medicine shows. He recorded Tutti Frutti in 1955 for Specialty Records in New Orleans. And it was so wild, so full of energy, the label almost didn't release it. It reached number 17 on the pop charts and number 2 on the R&B charts, and that was just the beginning. And the songs he recorded between 1955 and 1957, Long Tall Sally, Good Golly Miss Molly, Lucille, Rip It Up, those songs are the DNA of rock and roll. Not inspired by it, not influenced by it, they are it. At the height of his fame in 1957, Little Richard abruptly quit rock and roll. He threw his diamond rings into a river in Australia mid-tour and announced he was giving his life to God. The label was stunned. The fans were devastated. Pat Boone started covering his songs for white radio and made more money from them than Richard ever did. That's the music industry in 1957 right there. Next up, number 7 is a man who worked so hard, so relentlessly, that he made everyone else look like they were standing still. And what he built in those recording studios changed the sound of the world. Number 7, James Brown. James Brown. The godfather of soul, the hardest working man in show business. Both of those titles are completely accurate and still not enough. There is a live James Brown performance from the Apollo Theater in 1962 that you need to hear if you haven't. It was released as an album, and the record label thought it would fail. Nobody put out live albums back then. It went top 10 on the Billboard chart. The crowd sounds like they are losing their minds, because they were. Now, James Brown was born in 1933 in South Carolina, raised in poverty so severe that school sent him home for inadequate clothing. He taught himself music in reform school. He formed the famous Flames in the early 50s and signed to Federal Records, a subsidiary of King Records out of Cincinnati. His 1965 recording, Papa's Got a Brand New Bag, was a turning point, not just for him, but for all of popular music. And he moved the emphasis in rhythm from the 2 and the 4 to the 1, the first beat of the bar. That became the foundation of funk, and funk became the foundation of hip-hop. So the next time you hear a rap track built on a heavy beat that traces a straight line back to James Brown in a recording studio in 1965. James Brown was so obsessive about his live show that he fined his band members on the spot for wrong notes or missed cues, mid-performance, in front of thousands of people. You know, the fines were deducted from their pay. Some musicians hated it. But nobody argued with the results when his band was considered the tightest, most disciplined live outfit in the entire history of popular music. Number 6 is coming. And this one is the conversation that never gets old. 3 studio albums. That's all he left us. And he still makes this list. Let that sink in before we get there. Number 6, Jimi Hendrix.
Where you go with that gun in your head?
There's a version of this conversation where he's number 1, and nobody would win that argument. Imagine hearing Jimi Hendrix for the very first time in 1967 with no context, no YouTube, no rock history, just a man on a stage doing things to a guitar that literally nobody had ever done before. Audiences didn't always know whether to cheer or just stand there with their mouths open. A lot of them chose both.
I heard you shot your lady down, shut her down.
James Marshall Hendrix was born in Seattle in 1942. When he taught himself guitar on a one-string ukulele, he spent years as a sideman in the R&B circuit, backing artists like Little Richard and the Isley Brothers, before Chaz Chandler, the former bassist from the Animals, discovered him in a Greenwich Village club in 1966 and took him to London.
Yes, I did.
What happened next was extraordinary. Within a year, the Jimi Hendrix Experience had released Are You Experienced on Track Records and Reprise Records. And Hendrix was being called the greatest guitarist alive by Eric Clapton, Pete Townshend, and Jeff Beck simultaneously.
You know I'm gonna mess around town.
His performance at Monterey Pop in 1967 and then at Woodstock in 1969 became defining moments of the entire rock era. Hendrix was left-handed but almost always played right-handed guitars, flipped upside down and restrung. He also changed the tuning on his guitar constantly, often tuning down a half step, which gave his sound that slightly heavy, slightly loose quality that nobody has fully replicated since. Guitar manufacturers still release Hendrix signature models, trying to get close. None of them quite make it. Number 5 is the man who literally wrote the rules of rock and roll guitar. And the story of what the music industry did to him, it's one of the most important stories in this entire countdown. Number 5, Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry. The founding father, the man Keith Richards once said is rock and roll. Not inspired it, not influenced it. Is it every rock guitarist alive? Every single one owes a debt to Chuck Berry. That opening riff on Johnny Be Good, that duck walk across the stage, that way of bending a guitar note until it talks, that was Chuck.
I got the rolling on the right, sitting down at a rhythm review.
He invented the language that every rock musician has been speaking ever since. Charles Edward Anderson Berry was born in St. Louis, Missouri in 1926. He signed to Chess Records in Chicago in 1955, where producer Willie Dixon and Chess founder Leonard Chess helped shape his early recordings. Between 1955 and 1958, he released a run of singles: Maybelline, Roll Over Beethoven, School Day, Rock and Roll Music, Sweet Little 16, Johnny Be Good. That read like the founding documents of rock and roll. Here is the part of Chuck Berry's story that often gets glossed over, and it shouldn't, because it's central to understanding his legacy. In 1959, at the absolute peak of his fame, Chuck Berry was arrested under the Mann Act, a federal law that originally targeted human trafficking but was used selectively and controversially against black men in that era. He served nearly 2 years in federal prison. He was released in 1963 just as the British invasion was beginning, and his own songs were being played to millions. By the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, he came back. He kept recording, he kept touring, but the window when he might have dominated the 1960s the way the Beatles did, that window was taken from him. That's why this isn't just a music story, it's a history lesson, and it's why Chuck Berry at number 5 on this list represents not just what he achieved, but what he was never fully allowed to achieve. His music outlasted all of it. That's the real legacy. We're about to enter the top 4. And if you thought the stories got deep so far, the next entry built the most dangerous reputation in rock history and earned every bit of it. Number 4, the Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones.
To introduce myself, I'm
the greatest rock and roll band the world has ever seen. I said what I said. While the Beatles were taking you to the stars, the Rolling Stones were dragging you into the gutter, and I mean that as the highest possible compliment. Rock and roll needs that darkness. It needs that swagger. It needs something that feels like it could go wrong at any moment. And the Stones delivered that every single night for over 60 years. And they formed in London in 1962. Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, Brian Jones, Charlie Watts, and Bill Wyman. They signed to Decca Records and began releasing records in 1963.
When Jesus Christ had his moment of doubt and pain.
Their early sound was rooted in Chicago blues. They were obsessed with Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Robert Johnson. They didn't hide it. They wore it. Between 1968 and 1972, they recorded what is widely considered the greatest run of albums in rock history. Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, and Exile on Main Street. That's 4 albums of near-perfect rock and roll delivered in less than 4 years, produced partly by Jimmy Miller, recorded in studios across London, Los Angeles, and even a rented French villa. Exile was recorded in the basement of Keith Richards' mansion in the south of France with a mobile recording unit. Now the chaos of those sessions became the music.
Hope you guess my name. Yeah.
Number 3 is coming, and this one carries a story that has haunted music historians for decades. The truth about what was done to him and who did it will change the way you hear his music forever. Number 3, Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley.
Well, that's all right, mama. That's all right with you.
The King. Before Elvis, rock and roll was underground. After Elvis, it was a religion. Elvis walked into Sun Studio in Memphis in July 1954 and cut That's All Right for producer Sam Phillips. That recording hit Memphis radio the next day, and phones didn't stop ringing. He signed to RCA Victor in 1955.
So that gal you fooling, wish she ain't no good for you. That's all right.
Appeared on Ed Sullivan before 60 million viewers and released a run of hits: Heartbreak Hotel, Hound Dog, Jailhouse Rock, that rewrote the rules of popular music. Then he was drafted into the U.S. Army in 1958. When he came back, something had shifted.
That's all right, mama, anyway.
Here's the story that changes everything. Elvis never performed outside the United States, not once. At the peak of his global fame, when audiences in Europe, Australia, and Asia were desperate to see him, he stayed home. The reason comes down to one man, Colonel Tom Parker, his manager, and his controller.
I'm leaving town, baby. I'm leaving town to shut.
Parker took 50% of everything Elvis earned and refused every international tour offer that came in. For years, people just assumed it was business strategy. Then the truth came out. Colonel Tom Parker was not a colonel. His real name was Andreas Cornelis van Kuijk, born in the Netherlands in 1909. He had entered the United States illegally and never became a citizen. His Dutch birth certificate surfaced after his death in 1997. There are different versions of this story, and Parker's defenders point to other commercial reasons for staying stateside. But the pattern speaks for itself. The one man who could have taken Elvis to the world never let him leave the country. Elvis died in August 1977 at 42 years old, having never performed for the millions of fans outside America who loved him just as fiercely. That's not just a music story, that's a tragedy. And that's why the king of rock and roll deserves more than a hit list. He deserves the truth. Two more. Number 2 changed what a rock song was even allowed to say. And number 1, well, you know. But you might not know how close it came to never happening at all. Number 2, Bob Dylan, the
Once upon a time, you dressed so fine, through the bumps of dime in your prime.
greatest songwriter in the history of rock and roll. A man who spent his whole career making people uncomfortable and never once apologized for it. He arrived in New York in 1961, a 19-year-old kid from Minnesota named Robert Zimmerman with a beat-up guitar and a head full of Woody Guthrie songs.
You thought they were all in you.
He signed to Columbia Records through producer John Hammond and rewrote what a rock song was allowed to say. And then in 1965, he plugged in an electric guitar at the Newport Folk Festival. The crowd booed. Dylan kept playing.
How does it feel?
Like a Rolling Stone dropped that same year, 6 minutes long, dense as poetry, and it has been called the greatest rock song ever recorded by more critics than any other track in history. In 2016, Dylan won the Nobel Prize in Literature, the first songwriter ever. He didn't go to the ceremony. He sent a speech that was read by the American ambassador. People are still talking about that speech. Even his absence was iconic. One left. Number 1, you know who it is, but you might not know how close it all came to never happening.
Hey, Rocklore community. Before we continue, let's have a real talk for a second, bro. You know, this isn't just a channel to us. And I hope it's not just a place you come to watch a video and then forget about it. This is a community. It's a place where we get to dig up the secrets of rock and roll, share our favorite riffs, and celebrate the artists who maybe didn't get the love they deserved. Right now, only about 1% of our viewers are subscribed. We can change that together and grow this community. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button with the notification bell on. When you do, you're not just helping a channel grow. You're becoming a member of the Rocklore family. You're signaling to us and to YouTube that these stories matter, that this music is worth preserving, and that this community is a place you want to be. Subscribing is your way of making sure you're always in the loop. It means you'll be the first to know when we unearth a forgotten legend, drop a new countdown, or dive into a piece of rock history you've never heard before. So if you're a true fan of the lore, if you get that same feeling of discovery that I do, then come join us. It takes 1 second to be a part of something bigger.
Number 1, The Beatles.
Madonna, children at your feet. Wonder how you
The Beatles, of course. 4 kids from Liverpool who started in Hamburg playing 8 hours a night for drunk sailors and ended up inventing the future. They were rejected by Decca Records in January 1962. An executive named Dick Rowe told them guitar groups were on the way out.
Madonna, baby at your breast. Wonders how you
They signed to EMI's Parlophone label with producer George Martin, appeared on Ed Sullivan in February 1964 before 73 million Americans, and released 13 studio albums in 8 years. They didn't just make great music, they turned the recording studio itself into an instrument. Sgt. Pepper and Revolver used technology in ways nobody had tried before.
Wednesday morning papers didn't come. Thursday night.
In 1966, they nearly broke up. The touring had stopped. Death threats were coming in. John Lennon's comments about Christianity had caused bonfires of their records across America. The band was exhausted and fractured. George Martin pulled them into Abbey Road and said, "Let's see what we can do in this room." What came out of that decision was Revolver, Sgt. Pepper, The White Album, and Abbey Road.
Wonder how
They had every reason to quit. They chose to stay. And because they did, we have music that will outlast all of us. That's the full 10. I hope what you heard wasn't just a list of names. I hope you heard 10 human stories that changed the world one song at a time.